All right, everybody, we're having some major Murphy's Law tech issues of the day, but this is episode 182, and Andres is back in snowy Georgia this morning on November the 9th. November, wow. February the 9th is late over here for me on February 9th in the evening time. Welcome back, Andres.
It does look like November with this scene out here. It suddenly started snowing over here in Georgia. I've been in like super bipolar weather. Last week, I was in sunny San Diego for a work trip. It was super amazing. I've never been to San Diego before. I've heard it was super pretty, and it definitely lived up to its reputation. It was an amazing, amazing experience. But yeah, it was so nice and sunny, and now I'm coming back to just straight up snow in Georgia for some reason. But, can't complain. A little variety.
Awesome. Yeah, we're kind of hitting a little bit of a weird winter over here in Japan, in Hikari, where I'm at. In Yamaguchi Prefecture, it's kind of pretty chilly, but it's way warmer than it's ever been. And then we had like a cold snap on 1 or 2 days this week, and I was like walking to work out in the cold for a good 20 minutes and then hopping on my bike with gusts of wind. It was not fun, but overall it's been pretty good. I just got back from a nice little farewell party for the retirement of one of our leads in the special education department, as well as our we call them Kocho sensei, which means they're principal of the school. So they're retiring after hitting retirement age soon, but their final stages of work here is super busy, so they do a party the month before they retire.
Nice.
And it was a lot of fun. But boys and girls, we've got balance changes, we've got hero pools, we've got workshop updates. Andres is back. We're both snowstruck. Let's get into the weeds. This is going to be fun. So this week we have a bunch of changes coming to the PTR. We have not one, not two, but 3 total patches hitting the PTR this week, with a promise of a brand new hero pools hitting the very first day of the next season in February. So what do we got for season 21? Let's jump into a couple things here. So first and foremost is a game night recap. We did a little bit with Shazir here, so we won't bore you with a lot of the details, but we did end up having a great time over there. There's a lot of new faces, a lot of old time listeners finally able to show up. It was really fun to see you out there. A little bit of a crazy day without Andres there, but it was still fun. We also have the next one.
I'm so sad I missed it. Game nights are always so fun, but I'll definitely be here for the one this month.
Yeah, this month's going to be on the 28th of the that's the last Friday of February, so make sure you don't miss it. We'll see you there. And Andres, you want to talk a little bit about coaching real quick?
Yeah. Coaching is going great. Last month was a busy month. I think everyone had like New Year's resolutions to get better at Overwatch or something, because everyone who had signed up for coaching sessions hit me up. But it was awesome getting to catch up with everyone in the beginning of the year, see what everyone was. We've had tons of amazing coaching sessions. We've done some Ryan, we've done May, we've done a little bit of Sombra, Soldier 76. We coach a person for Anna and Baptiste as well. So there's been a little bit of everything there for sure. And some of the people have been coming back and they've been improving quite a bit. I'm so proud to see some of you guys making heaps of improvement and taking the advice to heart. Generally, we find that the people that are coming to us are putting effort in a lot of fronts. They're usually consuming content of some sort, whether it be in YouTube or the podcast, or they're watching streamers, whatever that may be. And they're already taking some of the extra steps. So you can definitely tell that they're driven people, and it's awesome to see it. But this applies to everyone, right? Even if you're not trying to take this super seriously and you just want a guided session of Overwatch. I found that some people also just kind of like coming to hang out. It's a 1 hour where we get to know you, get to talk to you, you get to ask any questions you might have to us. So it still works out, even if you just want to be a little casual about it. So having an awesome time and looking forward to February. Sign up for them.
Yeah, I had some really fun stuff going on this month myself. Actually ended up talking about some settings and some baseline stuff with one of the coaching sessions, and encouraging a support player to go try out doing some DPS, as well as a returning Coach E that has had a lot of scheduling conflicts in the past and just try to wiggle and finagle the schedules to make it happen just this last week, since we couldn't make it last month. And it turned out that in the game, there was 2 Smurfs from Diamond in low silver that apparently were actively throwing games and spawn killing him most of the game. So we just switched to Sombra, went invisible, and killed their support until they went to go kill him again, and they won the game. So nice. It was kind of fun. Doing some interesting problem solving on the fly, as well as giving him a little bit of confidence, because he shut that Genji down quite a few times, and he was in Diamond, and the guy's playing in bronze / not bronze. He's playing in low silver. So I was like, nice. Yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But yeah, let's get into the stuff here. So first on the docket is the big news that Andres missed that I didn't want to talk about without him. And that's why it's kind of gone on the delayed with the business trip, is the experimental, quote unquote, hero pools. And we touched on this at the very end of last week, but essentially this is their solution for implementing a ban system without a ban. So basically each hero will have a kind of a broad brush stroke look at the meta according to the development team, and they're going to kind of cater and choose. Their exact wording is that the dev team will, oh man, I've already missed it on my show notes here. Hero pools will be curated. That's the term they're using. It'll be curated by the dev team, and that will include probably something adjacent to what the Overwatch League is, and that will be 1 tank, 1 support, and 2 DPS removed from the roster for that given week. And then the next week, it will follow with a different one of the supports, different one of the tanks, and 2 different supports, or DPS. But that being said, the good news is, if you had your hero kicked out of the pool for 1 week, the next week, they're back in the mix. Guaranteed. Andres, why don't you talk a little bit about this? Because you hadn't had a chance to really talk about this on air yet.
Yeah. Let's have a little discussion about it. Hero pools are kind of interesting. They're like an in-between, like you said, in between hero bans and like keeping it like it is right now. I wasn't expecting them to do hero pools. I was expecting them to do hero bans before hero pools, to be honest. But I think that they do address sort of the same problem, but they both have different drawbacks, right? Like with bans, you get right to the point, right? If the community doesn't like a hero and they're like, this hero is too oppressive, we just shut it down. But that also leads to a lot of like perception and like certain biases. Like if a streamer, for example, 1 week is just like, we're just gonna ban this, that becomes sort of the perception of, or if the Overwatch League is doing it, that becomes the perception. And eventually the balance team is sort of forced to like change that hero. And it just keeps going on and on and on. And it might feel really bad for the people who actually like playing that hero, for example. With hero pools, we get a more measured sort of solution where the community can't just band over a hero, and it actually promotes like different metas or promotes different playstyles based on just the heroes that are not available, right? So for example, if you had Orisa Sigma being really good like a few weeks ago, if you ban Sigma, for example, then that's no longer an option, right? Like now you have to look for something else. If you ban Orisa, then likewise you have to go look for something else. And I'm all on board in it, but there are some weeks where some players will feel the brunt of it. Like I saw the PTR patch, some of the heroes that were banned that week, and it was like Wrecking Ball, Genji, McCree, and Baptiste. And I'm like, crap. That's basically my entire hero pool for this season.
Yeah.
That's like
all the stuff you played.
Yeah, that's all the stuff that I've been playing. Yeah, minus Sigma. And I mean, I can still play some other heroes, but those were like probably like 80%.
You were grinding those one really hard.
Yeah, that was probably like 80% of the heroes I was playing. They kind of like hit home. It's like, man, there's going to be some weeks that some player out there is going to feel it. And they're going to really have to go out of their comfort zone. And generally, I'm a player who plays a lot of different things. So I think that for hero pools, I'm not very badly positioned. But like if your hero pool is small and it just happens that you get that week where none of your heroes are playable, it's going to be rough. What do you think? Is that good? Is that bad?
I mean, I talked a little bit about this because it's such a different approach than how they're rolling the version in the pro circuit. Because basically what they're doing is essentially the same thing in the pro circuit, but it's based 100% on pick rates for basically an established meta of sorts. And then they're going to swap those heroes off. And when the heroes are off, they're going to do rebalancing. And then they're going to shove them back out again. So that seemed really interesting to me because it's kind of basically a system where it says, not only are these things going to be unavailable the following week, that you have to mix it up there, but then once you get them back again, they're going to be different than they were in the first place. So it's not just a new context where you've got the previous system and like essentially we talked about this when we were talking about hero bans a long time ago, Andres, when we were talking about, well, if this hero's here and it rotates out, that just means that the meta essentially is what's next in line rather than what's primary. Even if it's only perceived or it's actual, like really the best thing that you could be playing, there's a number one and there's a number two established, and that's what hero bans was effectively do. But with hero pools, the way they're rebalancing them, it means it's not only are you losing what you had as meta, that once it comes back, it's going to have a slight adjustment. So it's could be completely altering to the point of relearning the hero, or it could just be damage rework, you know? And even sometimes damage reworks are, or even just like the amount of time it takes you to kill something is enough to fundamentally shift the playstyle. I mean, we saw that with McCree, right? When McCree got that fire rate increase, that was nuts.
And I think that that's a very important point to bring up, because going forward with the pacing of these changes, if we're going to get hero pools and, like you're saying, changes constantly to the patch notes, and they've stayed true to their word so far. They said that they were going to increase the speed at which they're going to release patches. And so far, we've had like 3 patches in like 3 weeks, or like a patch a week, basically.
On the PTR, to be fair, we've got 3 things, but they're patching the PTR relatively quickly, and then they're going to shunt it out for the next season.
Yeah, exactly. So we're seeing kind of like fast changes and hero pools added. I think that the game is going to get a little bit more complex in that sense. Like, it's already hard to keep up sometimes with the evolving metas. And I'm not saying for the top players, I mean, this is probably just like something that naturally evolves as they're playing. But for the general population kind of thing, a lot of people are not keeping up with like what's good, what's bad, and now it's gonna change weekly. Now every week you're gonna have to be like, okay, what is good? We need to figure out or crack the meta this week. And what that means to me is that they're gonna be like pocket metas, right? Like, you're gonna have to really know, like, okay, what can we get away with without these heroes being around? Is it gonna be dive? Is it gonna be like more brawly comps? Is it gonna be more of a double shield meta that's gonna be good this week? And the good players are gonna have to be able to recognize this in order to be able to like keep climbing and not be able to like get stalled. But it is gonna be very relevant that you know what you can get away with depending on what's not there.
So there's 2 things I've been mulling on this for this next week, and I wanted to run them by you. So the first one is relatively simple. It's kind of like putting my brain not just in what I think about this, but like, who does this affect? You know what I mean? Like, how does this type of player feel based off of this change, and how does this player feel? The first one would be the player that loves playing Overwatch, and when they want to play hero pools, they log into the game and they only play, let's just use, they like Wrecking Ball because Wrecking Ball is cool. And so they play Wrecking Ball and that's it. Well, when they roll up and Wrecking Ball's meta and gets, removed from the hero pool, what does that player do? They only Q tank, they only play one of the tanks, and then that's it. Because the only other thing that's the redeeming value is that they can play Wrecking Ball. They just can't do it in a competitive play mode for a week.
Yeah.
So the catch-22 is you only have to wait a week, and you have, or you can play something else
with the
in a different role.
With the new changes, though, since you're bringing that up, I think that's gonna be a dying breed of Overwatch player, right? If you play only tank and only Wrecking Ball, you're just not gonna have a good time under the new system. I mean, maybe if you play only tank, you'll be fine because you'll get still fast queues. But I think that the system is really incentivizing everyone to know a variety of characters and a variety of roles. Not just, hey, play only Genji and get to Grandmaster by soloing only Genji. I mean, that could be done maybe when Overwatch was first released, but nowadays it's so hard to do, right? If people know you're just playing that, they're going to find a way to just shut you down. And if you have nowhere else to go, then, you know, you're going to struggle there.
I mean, I understand your point, but like, I even got a player that refuses to do that, even though that's the system in which it exists in the game. You know, they don't want to climb unless it's with this thing. It's like, that's just, maybe it's a dying breed of Overwatch. Maybe that is true. But the other thing is that there are a lot of people out there that's how they enjoy the game. They only want to play the thing that they identify with. The game has very, very strong hero motifs and unique things that the hero does, as well as the unique hero stories and things that people identify with. Maybe it's less about the gameplay and more about, I don't know, personality, or like kind of just like how they connect with a player or and a character. It's really strange. But I think that the biggest things that we should be able to pull away from this, for this style of player in particular, is that hero pools, they've said over and over and over and over and over again, including in Overwatch League, that this is going to be temporary, subject to change, to the point of scrapping the whole thing if needed. And the other is that feeling of removal, at least for just this season, maximum is going to last 2 weeks. Because that means the first week that the bans are in place, you cannot play that. And if they're so good that they're going to be meta again, they will be removed again. So over the course of one season, if it's a season is 4 weeks, give or take a couple days, during 2 weeks, they're not available. So that's your worst case scenario. And your best case scenario is the whole system gets scrapped and you just play how you like in the first place. And maybe they have to figure out a different solution.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to give it a try. I think you're right. Like, right now, Blizzard seems like they're in a very open-minded spot about Overwatch. I think that they've tried being more conservative about how they balance the game and how often they offer input. But right now, to me, it seems like they're almost going the Riot way, the League of Legends sort of like patching mentality, right? Very quick, keeps you on your toes. And anyone who's played League of Legends or any game by them can tell. I'm not like the biggest like League of Legends person. I've played more like games like Teamfight Tactics, but Teamfight Tactics sort of has the same cadence too as their patching. And I'll tell you one thing. It keeps the game fresh and it doesn't let metas kind of like hang out for too long. But it is a challenge keeping up with the game. Kristen is the one who plays a lot of Teamfight Tactics. I play a little bit with her every once in a while, but I remember it was like I stopped playing for like a week or two and then came back. Sometimes the game would be completely different, like reworked. Like a lot of the characters would be like doing different things, actually. There would be characters that were no longer in the game and new ones that had been added. And it's some radical changes. And I don't know if Overwatch is going to get that radical, but it's definitely going to get more in line with that type of change. And there's pros and cons, right? It does keep it very fresh. Like metas are not stale at all in that type of environment. But again, you have to put a lot of your own groundwork to be able to keep up with an environment that is changing so much.
Yeah, I totally agree, because in the space of Teamfight Tactics, that's honestly one of the things that pulled me away from it. It's just like, as someone that can only really dedicate themselves to a couple games and also producing a podcast about a specific one that I need to make sure I play sometimes, then Teamfight Tactics is not exactly high on my priority list outside of just enjoying it. And when I sit down to go play, I don't want to really have to do much besides learning a little bit and then kind of hanging out and learning the strategy and playing the game. But then once it starts becoming fresh and you play it more, it's really, really, really fun. But then once you step away for however long, and you miss an update or you don't play very, very often and you miss 2 updates, then the game gets really daunting because it's almost like relearning a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
And Overwatch can feel like that, honestly, after some of these major patch changes. But it just depends on what a major patch constitutes as in the future. Like, we don't really know. The frequency of updates doesn't really tell us the potency of the updates, right? It doesn't tell us the quality of what we're getting. It could just be like, oh, this barrier gets tweaked a little bit, and this hero doesn't get this anymore, or this is a rework, and this hero gets completely different new stuff. And Widowmaker has 2 sniper rifles with double scopes. Like, I don't know. Like, it's completely nuts. We got a new hero, you know, that sort of thing.
Definitely. And I don't think like the playstyle will change as much in between like how you're playing or the mechanics of the heroes, basically. Like maybe some abilities will get reworked here and there, but I don't think the mechanics of the heroes themselves are going to change too much. Like if you know how to play Hanzo, you know how to play Hanzo. But I think it's more of the style. You're going to have to play the heroes every week is going to change a lot, right? Like one week it might be like you really have to focus the shields. The next week it might be like you really got to ignore the shields and just go and surround them, right? Next week it might be like, you know what? You can't surround them. You got to get past the shields with speed or something like that. And like that is what I think is going to keep people on their toes, because that is the hardest part to recognize about Overwatch, right? Like if you know how to aim with Widowmaker or you know how to like play Reinhardt, you're okay mechanically, but can you adapt your playstyle to what that week demands? And I think that, like you were saying, that's going to be great for players who play Overwatch a lot and who are like eager to find that challenge and be able to kind of like theory craft, and every week is kind of fresh for them, and that you have that mentality, and it oscillates, right? Some players get really motivated certain months and be like, I'm gonna grind Overwatch, but the months that maybe you're not as motivated, or the players who are just not willing to put in that much time into it, I think they're gonna feel like the game might be moving a little fast. That's my take on these changes.
So my biggest thing that I like about this is that it gives everyone time in the sun, if that makes sense, to use an analogy. Everyone gets their day to play and to be meta if they can, because basically with all these changes, if they're doing rebalancing like they're doing with Overwatch, even if it's not every other week like it is for Overwatch, but rather if it's like relatively frequent like they've been promising, then great. Like everyone's going to get their time in the sun. If something's meta, then it gets rebalanced, repatched, something goes through, and then maybe they're not even meta ever again for the next like 4 or 5 cycles. Great, sweet. And then somebody else gets their time in the sun. But the thing that sucks is that, say you go on vacation for 2 weeks and your time in the sun's missed for the next like 4 months. You don't really know what to expect. It's just what happens, you know? But my biggest concern is going to be for really like what Blizzard has promised versus what they're going to deliver, because that's something we don't really know. We don't really have a context. We just have what they say, and it's really contingent on them not only doing what they say, but making frequent changes, like we said, and actually making the changes big enough so that they're not just like rotating 2 metas on the dime and like tweaking like half of a percentile on some damage numbers, you know what I mean? Or like the total amount of barriers and all that.
Yeah, they said they were going to be more aggressive, but you're right. It was one thing to say it, another thing to do it. And I'm not saying it's good and bad either way. I think that either approach has good and bad things. We've talked about how a slow balancing approach in the past can lead to a lot of community like endeavors or community kind of like initiatives to like change the meta, or you know, you can put the onus on the company and let Blizzard be the one who dictates the meta by balance changes. But then that puts a different kind of pressure on the players, right? Like now it's on you to keep up with all these changes and to know how to react to these changes fast because then the next week you have different changes, right? And now if you reacted too slow to the changes of the previous week, it's too late, right? Like those are gone. That opportunity is gone. Now you have to adapt to the new ones. So it's going to keep everyone on their toes for sure.
Do you think this change is like a really good distraction for us waiting for Overwatch 2? Because I think it's really quite nice for that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that all this experimentation is probably a good period, right? Because they already said there's not going to be any more big stuff coming to Overwatch 1, except for maybe like a new hero before Overwatch 2 hits. And I imagine maybe it's going to be like an introductory hero. Like they'll release it like a few months or a little bit before Overwatch 2 to sort of kind of like get the lore started and can get the story kind of like jump start again and the hype kind of there. So I don't expect it anytime soon. And in the meantime, they seem like they're putting a ton of effort into the workshop one, into the experimental mode that were coming. So they're gonna be doing some huge changes to game modes where we're gonna be able to play it in the actual client, like
Yeah.
having one tank, 3 DPS, and 2 healers, for example. So I think it's gonna be a very experimental period for the game right now to kind of keep things rolling and moving until we get Overwatch 2.
Let's go through two more things with hero pools and then we'll move on. The first one is that I guess it's more of a discussion point, but we can keep it short. What do you think about how hero pools operates around new heroes? Because a big concern that I have is like Blizzard did all of this work for months and months and months, 6 to 9 month cycle, introduce a new hero, everyone plays it for a week and it gets banned.
Well, I think that's the beauty of hero pools, because it's on their side, right? They can decide whether to do that or not. If the new hero is good and everyone's enjoying it, I think it would be sort of a silly decision of them to be like, okay, we're putting in the ban pool. If you left it up to the community, that might happen, right? Like the new heroes kind of like overpowered. Oh no, ban it. But historically, new heroes in Overwatch have never been good initially until people figure them out.
I think Doomfist is the only exception.
Even Doomfist, like, he was good mainly because he was busted ability-wise. Yeah. But, like, people playing Doomfist in, like, the first few weeks of him releasing came nowhere near what you see a guy like Chipsa do nowadays, for example. So, every hero in Overwatch always has this ramp-up period. So,
sure.
I've never seen it, like, in Heroes of the Storm or, like, other, like, MOBAs, for example, where sometimes a new hero is, like, the flavor of the week. Is just too good to pass up, right? It's super overpowered, and sometimes it's done on purpose like that. It's a little bit overtuned so that when it's released, it has a big impact. Everyone wants to play it, and then you would kind of like down tune it a little bit. But with Overwatch, even if you try to do that, I feel like sometimes it takes a while to really like learn a hero, even at the pro level.
Yeah. Okay, the next thing is here. I'm just going to run through what Jeff said as a follow-up to this, because he did go on a kind of little of a talking spree on the forums. He says hero pools will be announced for season 21 of competitive play only. The teams that made this change to the game says that they really liked the every week cycle and stated that the every week cycle is the longest period that they felt comfortable with. And so they're going to start with that first. But someone had asked about if they had considered making the pool every few days rather than as a week. And he said, absolutely, we had considered this. And in fact, we even toyed around with the idea of swapping a hero pool after every game. So every game you roll in, you have a brand new hero pool to figure out what's going to happen in 35 seconds of select your hero.
I think that would be too much. Like, it sounds fun on paper, like, ooh, new and exciting game every time. But if you're solo queuing especially, imagine having to coordinate.
You can't plan for that randomness.
Yeah,
is the
imagine
problem.
having to coordinate that every time. It's just games would fall apart so fast.
That scenario, though, does bring back into the competition, like basically it essentially is a random ban system, and that's probably why they're not going with that.
Yeah.
So
I think you still have to
a week
leave
is a long
some
enough
stability.
The week is a long enough time for the dev team to actually react to something, maybe roll something out on the PTR and then shoot it out, you know. Right. And then the fact that they're putting this new testing block in the arcade, there's actually a new game thing they're going to put in the arcade or in a new card, basically, that is test. And it's going to happen so that the people can rejoice on PlayStation, on Switch, and on Xbox. You now have a testing version that you can go and test things if you would like to. They're going to do it there instead of really relying on the PTR pretty heavily.
I'm glad that they did this, especially for people in consoles, and even people who play on PC. Sometimes people don't want to go to the PTR and put time there because they know that that's not contributing to like their progress in their main accounts, right?
Absolutely.
So, like, it's sort of like a novelty thing, like, oh, new changes, let me go check them out. But it seems like that is just to check. It's especially good for content creators or people who are like really trying to like dig into the meta and get ahead of it, right? Like super competitive people is great. But for the average person, there's no incentive to download a huge client and go test this out and not put progress into your main account. So doing it this way, I think guarantees them that they're going to have people playing all these test stuff in large amount of quantities rather than relying on a small sample pool of the PTR, which never felt right? It never felt right to have to go away from Overwatch to sort of test these stuff. So
there's also that little thing that people were complaining. They're like, well, if I go into PTR and I'm going around and playing and testing all this stuff and earning loot boxes, I don't get any of that stuff. It just disappears.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyways, feels bad.
Yeah, feels bad, man. It's an old one. All right. The next thing that they said on this was that they are definitely not going to be moving to a system that is longer than a week unless the community really wants it and the dev team agrees with it after long and thought out process. Hero pools will be curated by the dev team directly. We said that earlier. It will be a, quote, combination of targeting metas that players are being vocally negative about. And recent examples would be double barrier, the 3-3 goats meta, and slightly encouraging other playstyles, i.e. a quote-unquote more reliable composition might be fun for a week, but I'm sure we'll be refining our approach over time, end quote. So that's basically what they're really going for with regards to this section of the changes, is that they're going to really rely heavily on feedback, vocally negative perceived metas, not necessarily actual metas, right? So they'll probably take the data of what's being played, what's being picked, what's being the win rates, and then also take that with a grain of salt as they look at the perceived metas and what people are doing. Furthermore,
that's important, right? That's important to mention because it's a big difference. For example, they mentioned how May a while back was perceived super meta, right? Like, oh, you gotta run May. Every pro player was running May. But if you looked at the data, May was one of the least played heroes. Actually, Soldier 76 had a higher pick rate at the time, and so did Genji than May did. And you could see that in the ladder a little bit. Even though you knew May was the pick, a lot of people are just not playing it because they just didn't want to. But let's say that meta does come around. Blizzard could be like, okay, we're betting May for this week. Kind of like quench the thirst of the people who are like really mad about May. But not necessarily rely on their own internal numbers, right?
I mean, they can probably do it to rely to a certain extent, but again, the whole speed of the update and the potency is definitely a thing. And the last thing here is that it will be a system. Hero Pools is not a system that is broken up by rank. It is a broad brushstroke for everyone, probably for QA and for development cycles. This is much easier, as well as like making a segmented system that adjusts when you rank up. That would be insane to me. To really have to create a system that does that. That seems like that's riddled with bugs and stuff to deal with. But anyways, let's talk about workshops for a bit, because Andres brought this up prior and I wanted to go back to that. We have a swath of new stuff. So first and foremost, blank maps. Second, features. Third, values added and updates, as well as even more than that is coming. And the 3 new maps are essentially blank canvases. Andres showed me this in the patch notes, and that there are some photos. If you search these words online, or if you have access to the PTR on PC, you can hop on and check it out yourself. There is Workshop Chamber, which is a small area that's an enclosed space. You have Workshop Island, which has kind of a vertical and a lower area of water kill zone called Workshop Island. And then there's Workshop Expanse, which is a massive area that's completely open, a big flat whitewashed brick wall on the ground that you can run around on. And Andres and I are very, very excited to be getting some blank canvases for you workshoppers out there.
This is very cool. This is definitely like another step in the workshop. We still don't have like a custom map creator or editor, but this is sort of like laying the groundwork for potentially doing that in the future. If you picture these maps, they're literally just a blank surface One of them is covered like in like an indoor surface. The other one's out in the open with like ocean on all the sides. And the other one is a massive expanse where you can just put anything you want in there. Now, currently in the workshop, you can't put any buildings. So unfortunately, these are completely blank. But some people have already kind of like started doing some cool things about it. One person, I think, made a Overwatch auto chess in the island looking one, because it's already kind of laid out kind of like in a chess like pattern. And people were already kind of like toying around with game modes and different stuff in it. You can put bots, and you can sort of like direct the bots, tell them what you want them to do. So you could create some custom aim maps or some cool stuff in there like that. It's definitely cool for aim arena maps. You now don't have to use the Havana makeshift kind of like area that people found for it.
Yeah.
You actually have a good map for it that you can play around with it. So that's exciting. And in the future, these maps could act as map creators, right? Blank canvases where you can just import this template where I want an empty room, or I want a big open space. And then you start building on top of these. So I think it's super awesome. I'm so glad that they're keeping the workshop alive. I actually have like this weird speculation in my head that this is Jeff Kaplan's gift to the community. Like, no matter what happens to Overwatch in the future, if they're able to create a custom map editor with full functionality where players can create whatever game mode they want inside of their engine, like, then Overwatch would last forever. Even like
this is also the first step to getting what you would have in Warcraft 3 and StarCraft 2 of being able to make stuff. Like, this is the fundamental start of that, if they wanted it to be.
And I was going to say, like, it's one of the reasons why Warcraft 3 has lasted so long. Now, a lot of you are going to bring up Warcraft Reforged right now and the whole debacle that's happening with that. That is very unfortunate. And it's unfortunate they actually took down the older version of Warcraft 3, because that is what had the full map editor functionality. I really hope they come to their senses and bring it back, because that is a treasure. Any company that decides to do that with their game and opening up for the population should be praised, because they're literally giving the community all the tools in their hands to basically make the game that they want, with all the assets, with all the engine, with all the capability that they and the work that they put in the past. So I have a feeling that Jeff knows that, and that's why he keeps this project alive. And even though it probably has no resources and no backing from upper management, and this is just speculation, I don't know anything about this, but it does look like from the outside that he understands the importance of that and has these two dedicated guys just being like, do it, you know what I mean? Just do
Never
this
take a
sandbox
away from a kid. Never take a sandbox away from the kids.
Exactly. So I think it's really cool. And the workshop really excites me because of that reason. And every time I see more steps added to that, it just like a little flame rekindles in my heart.
And yeah, any business game, especially game decision to get rid of a sandbox style game mode, should just stick their head in Minecraft success for 10 minutes and realize how much of a gigantic business has spawned out of just making a square bunch of blocks in a random generated space. And essentially people doing what my wife does, which is like generating the same world over and over again and building in different places, like and playing with the pets. Like, it's such a simple thing, and if you want to make that as a capability for people that want to play Overwatch and give that to them, then we will be around for a very long time. That being said, there's a lot of other things that we don't really have time to talk about in the workshop, but we thought that those were the biggest pinnacle breakthroughs. There's, like I said there before, there's other features. There's completely new value sets that you can go mess with. There's also some new features for creation. And again, some other things that are tweaked, updated, and hot fixed, as well as bug fixes across the board. So please go check those out if you're interested in that sort of thing. You will be able to see that on the patch notes. Furthermore, we have one big thing on this that's last for this patch. which there's three more minor a couple minor things and a major thing. The first one is that assembling heroes phase is now down to 35 seconds. This has been nerfed / removed like slow to like faster and faster over the course of time. So it now is dropped by another 5 seconds for this change. And the career profiles have also gotten a quality of life update for navigation and display. I think they're also working on something for the player icons that were supposed to be sorted. I'm not sure if that's patched in with this change or if that's coming in the future for Overwatch 2 or before that, but that was something that was mentioned as a quality of life thing. And Maywall now has a cracked, damaged look similar to other barriers in the game for when you shoot it a lot. So that's great. Quality of life thing for Maywall. And the major update is how stuns are going to be more consistent in Overwatch. And I will just read this because Andres and I talked a little bit about this in the pre-show, and then I'll let him talk about the impact of this. Yeah, we have updated the interactions of all stuns. Flashbang, Earth Shatter, Freeze, Sleep Dart, and Accretion for Sigma players to be more consistent. The developer comment says that new stuns will only replace an existing stun if the new stun duration is longer than the time remaining on the current one. For example, if you flashbang stun someone, it will not apply the stun to someone that has literally just been knocked on the ground by an Earth Shatter because the stun duration of the ultimate of Earth Shatter is longer for the full stun effect of laying down and getting up than the quick dazed look effect that you get from a flashbang grenade. In addition to that, the minimum guaranteed stun time for Anna's Sleep Dart, that is actually a 1.5 second duration from falling down and getting up, will be the one that they apply when multiple stuns are in place, is the 1.5 stun, not the incapacitated effect, and then you wait, and then if you wait for the sound that would be at the proper time, then the stun duration of them getting back up is longer. Anders, go ahead.
So to be honest, I want to see this change in action because I'm not exactly sure how is changing
what the impact's
everything.
Gonna be.
Yeah, what's the impact in it? From the sounds of it, it sounds like you're gonna be able to, or not going to be able to, like overlap stuns as easy, right? Like you're gonna have to be a little bit more mindful of when you're doing the stuns, and maybe it'll help with sort of like the stun chains that sometimes happens. Like you get hooked, then you get like slept, then you get Orisa pulled and frozen, and like, especially for tanks, this is super annoying, right? For more mobile heroes, this is not as much of a problem, but especially Reinhardt is why they had to give him the new Ironclad passive, because poor Reinhardts were just like getting CC chained all over the place, and this change sounds like it wants to address some sort of that, and they do seem like they've been looking at stuns quite a bit because they changed the interaction with Doomfist, his uppercut, where you're no longer able to move up in the air. Now you can move faster. And they're changing that with Hammond's pile drive. So I don't know if this is a response to like the ongoing debate of stuns. And this is in every game that has this sort of mechanics, right? Players don't like losing control of their characters and not being able to interact. Stuns
they
are very powerful.
Really like denying it. They always really love denying
it. They do. So I don't know. It seems like they're toning down stuns overall across the game. They're not getting rid of them. I think that they're still, there's still like interactions with a lot of the stuns. And like you said, baiting them, and the fact that they exist keeps certain heroes from getting like too aggressive in certain places. So I think there's a time and place for stuns in this game. But because of the sheer amount of them that we have right now and how good people have gotten at sort of like utilizing them, they sometimes get a little bit out of hand.
Yeah, I think this is a large change to the game, but in practicality, it's more of a large change for the development side of things rather than for the players, if that makes sense. Making something more consistent means that the players can learn the game easier and play the game easier and understand how interactions work more. So to me, that's a big win for us as players, even though this is more of a developmental thing. And that's why I want to really highlight this change today, because I think that in the edge cases where you're like, I'm not really sure how this works, we can be sure from now on. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a big broad brush stroke.
Oh, Shaz is actually bringing up a good point over here. He is asking if shorter stuns were overriding longer stuns, and that might be a thing, right? Like that might be what they're fixing there. Like if you have a longer stun and you apply a shorter one, maybe the duration of the longer stun would get reduced. So I could see that to make it more consistent, but not sure.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Like Andres and I were talking about the scenario in which you get Earth Shattered and Flashbanged. Let's say like the Earth Shattered and Flashbang come out at the same time. Essentially, the player would not receive the Flashbang at all. They'd probably receive the Flashbang damage, but the animation would not display them as like randomly just instantly teleporting to like a dazed T-pose in front of you for like a half second.
Especially the ones that knock you down. If you get several of those, it looks really funny because your character is just kind of like standing up and dropping down several times.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also, Shaz, thanks for the big, what is it, 1025 cheer, as well as Wegsy28 for subscribing on Twitch. You guys are great for showing up for the live show in the morning. I know it's tough to make these sometimes. There's something though, Andres, about Sleep Dart I can talk about, where if you get Earth Shattered, you get that whole knockdown and stand up, right? The knockdown, lay down for a second, and then get up for a second, however long that whole duration is. And then Sleep Dart goes out. If you waited until somebody like stood up and then slept them again, then they would go like and like flatten again, but it wouldn't look natural. It wouldn't be the whole impact and like the whole animation, and then they hit the ground and this big thing. It's almost like if you hit them while they're laying down with the Sleep Dart, they like stand up and then they like impact. It's like this really awkward thing because they stand up before the impact happens, impact after the Sleep Dart's already hit, and then fall down again. And that's really weird to me how that interaction works out. But it could mean that if you Sleep Dart and do something around the same time, whichever one is longer is just the thing that overrides, and maybe it makes bugs less likely. I think that's probably what's going to be really in place.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Wanted Winston does bring a good point here in chat, and is, let's say some Reinhardt shatters your team, and somebody gets sleep darted or slept while in the shatter, like immediately as he's getting shattered, and that person wakes up because damage is coming in towards him. He'll get up before everyone else in the shatter. Or let's say you get shattered and then flashbang stunned immediately right after. The person who got flashbanged will get up before everyone else. And I think that might have been what was happening and why this change is being implemented, so that the flashbang doesn't override the larger stun, right? This wouldn't apply for things like sleep stutter. If you flashbang a sleeping target, you're still waking them up, so you're ending the stun right then and there. But if you flashbang and sleep stutter almost at the same time, then the flashbang would wear off before the sleep dart while they're like falling down. I think that's what was happening.
So Earthshatter's duration is labeled as 3 seconds, but if I'm working in some of the stuff that we know about Ana, I believe that a half second of that is the knockdown animation. 2 seconds is on the ground, and the other half second is them getting back up. So that all has things in place because there's no slow effect to this. It's kind of like the animation of you going down, stay down for 2 seconds, the animation of coming back up. But if you chain CC them, now you have to wait until they hit that 2 to 2.5 second window before Ana's sleep dart will actually even do anything more than what it's already doing. Chaining CC is effectively useless now, unless you can chain it back to back to back to back, rather than when they have times. Now they're going to have a little bit more of a window to react, or you hit them anyways and nothing happens. That's also a possibility. So that's how we're hoping the interaction works. But again, this is super edge case stuff that we may not be 100% on. Let's go to the next thing I play. We have a big chunk of more updates to balance rebalancing on February 6th, 2 days later. Anders, why don't you talk about Wrecking Ball's change with the pile driver air speeds?
Yeah, Wrecking Ball is getting a change where pile driver when it lifts you up, you're unable to move your character for a period of time. That period of time is getting nerfed to 0.5 seconds. I think it was I
It
don't
was
have,
one.
it was 1 second, so a full second that you were up in the air. And honestly, this was one of the best setups as a DPS. When I'm playing with a good Hammond, is one of my favorite things to do. To just pay attention to when the Hammond is coming in, and as soon as he pile drives, I'll just pay attention to who's up in the air and shoot at them. It's super effective with guys like Hanzo, for example. He'll just pile drive a Nana and you get a body shot on her. Boom. That's the easiest kill that you can get in your life right there. And I think that this is very noticeable, especially at the higher end and masters and stuff, where 1 second up in the air, it's sure death because everyone's going to be looking for that sort of move. So again, like the Doomfist change with the uppercut, now you're giving a little bit more tools to the person being attacked to sort of like get away and react.
Fun fact, the new rising uppercut is 0.6 seconds. So literally 0.1 second slower for you to actually react with Doomfist than it is for Wrecking Ball. And I think, if I remember correctly, Orisa just got a rework on hers for Halt to be pretty close to the same time. Let's check this. The duration is, guess what? 0.65 seconds on the pull and slow. So it looks like they're all trying to put it in that same range for effects that do not let you control yourself. So that's great.
And I'll be okay with that. Yeah, like if every effect that doesn't allow you to control your character sort of had the same duration
style. Yeah.
Because that gives a ton of consistency, and then no matter what hero you're versing that might do that to you, you sort of have the same like timing that you can utilize. So I think that overall that's a great change.
I don't understand why they would tweak it on such a tiny minute level of like 0.5, 0.6, 0.65. You know what I mean? Like that seems really weird.
You'd be very surprised because, just to talk about your perception as a human being for a second here, in listening, for example, which is one of your fastest senses, you can perceive things down to about 5 to 10 milliseconds. Depends on like how good you are with it. And it happens, for example, in recording. When you're recording, especially digitally, there's a small delay between when you speak into the microphone and when it gets into the computer, for example. And the better equipment that you have, the shorter the delay that's going to be. But it becomes super noticeable if you have more than like 10 or 15 milliseconds. And we're talking about milliseconds. That's like 0.1 seconds, right? In some of these abilities, we're talking about like 0.6 seconds. That is usually enough for you to not only be able to digest what is happening visually, but to also provide a response physically, right? Like a mechanical response with your body. I think that some of the best response times gets down to like, 0.2, 0.3 milliseconds, which is incredibly fast. So when you're talking about those margins and you take a millisecond away, that does make the difference between a big part of the player base and the other part reacting and not reacting to it.
Oh, you don't have to tell the guy that plays on 180 ping from Japan what ping works like. I can tell you how it works like firsthand. I've been playing on it for 4 years. All right. Let's look at the next thing. Brigitte's repair pack. Very interesting that they're targeting somebody that this change seems a bit more predictive in nature with the hero pools, because she might be included to deal with more of the flankers threat. I have noticed that Brigitte's actually pretty good in a couple of fringe like counter situations. She's been really strong when I've been playing with I play and Jay Lee, when we have a threat that keeps diving us, and especially in more of the open maps, it's really nice. But her armor over heal that gives you armor caps at 50 now, which is a 25 armor nerf. So if you wanted to give somebody armor and then have it continually go up as they're taking incoming damage when you like throw it on a Genji that's going up for their ultimate, for example, Yeah, they're not going to get as much armor anymore. And also, not only that, but the healing per second is decreased from 60 to 55. So, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't remember if this is old Mercy or if this is current Mercy beam, but I believe that's about the same as Mercy's beam currently. I'm just going to double check this really quickly. Nah, it's the damage amp. It's 50 health per second for Mercy. Okay. So this is old Mercy, I believe. 55.
Yeah, so this sounds interesting, right? Because I feel like for a while, Brigitte has been considered not that good of a healer, and she's on the lower healing side. But I think that as more and more people get used to her playstyle, and then we see more pros utilize Brigitte, we're starting to realize, like, no, she actually has a great healing output. If you can trigger Inspire consistently, it has a huge range, so you can actually catch more people than you can with Lucio Aura, for example. And then her armor pack, I think it's still one of the better range heals that we have in the game, especially for squishies, for example. If you're talking about Genji or a McCree, or people that kind of like getting brawly, like Doomfist, for example, that armor pack makes a huge difference because you can still get it to him pretty reliably at a pretty high distance. And if he's close to fully healed, he's getting extra armor, which he already loves. He already needs that extra health to be able to kind of like get in there and get in people's faces and get out with his shield. So the armor is just playing to his playstyle really, really nicely. So even though you think of Brigitte as like this sort of like static healer, she's actually great for healing dive compositions. For example, if you have like a Genji and a Tracer that are constantly moving all over the place, Brig is good. You just have to play her very carefully because now you have to really hug corners. You have to be really mindful of when you're taking damage or you'll go down really fast. Rally is still a great ultimate, for example. Now that Winston is getting a lot more popular, I think that Rally completely counters a Winston dive. Winston tries to dive you and you pop Rally, you're just not going to die to that Winston ever. So she's a strong healer right now. It just takes a little bit of nuance to play, and they're nerfing their heals a little bit because I think they're noticing this.
Also, heals in Overwatch are just generally really, really powerful.
At the pro level, you guys look at some. At the pro level, you've seen some like Brigitte Lucio comps, which you would think would be low healing, but I mean they are lower healing than if you bring like a Baptiste or an Ana, but not as low as you would think. Good enough that you can sustain like a very mobile comp with it.
Yeah, of course. Also, just to keep this in context for you guys out there, Ana currently has the highest amount of healing per second in the game at 75 over the course of a 0.6 second window. And then everything that you get from a Baptiste is actually 5 healing less than Brigitte is getting after getting nerfed with the repair pack. But the other thing to keep in mind with Brigitte is technically her output's even higher because if you have Inspire plus a health pack, that's ridiculous. That's a lot of healing. And the health pack can go into armor to overheal to give you more effective health.
And you also have to keep in mind, Ana has the highest single healing output. She can put a ton of heals into one target. But Brigitte can put that same amount of heals into all of her team as long as she's like in a good enough position.
And Baptiste can do 50 to a group in an instant.
Right.
With a very slight delay on the missile speed. So that's where his power comes from. But Zenyatta's healing is 30 per second with an orb on a single target. Mercy is 50 with a beam on yet again, a single target unless she's using Valkyrie. So you're still better than... The best way to look at it is that she is now the strongest off healer in the game, or the secondary support in the game that can heal your team.
Healing wise,
as far as healing output is concerned.
The only thing with her is that your team has to know how to play with that type of healing. With that type of healing, there's not a lot of room to take a lot of burst damage because her healing is rather slow. It's just very consistent and it's there all the time if the Brigitte is good too. So very good against like chip damage, very good at like sustain fights for a prolonged period of time, really bad against burst. So
Yeah.
when you're playing with that type of healer, you have to sort of be a little bit more conservative of taking large quantities of damage, because she's not gonna be able to like keep you up through that, right? Well, Anna can with her nade, with her huge amount of healing per second on a single target. She can keep you through some thick damage. Brig struggles a little bit more. Everything
She
is
wants
over
you to
time.
brawl. The
Yeah.
longer that fight goes, the stronger your team gets.
Yeah, so you have
Because
to.
the second that Anna has to reload, you're gonna win.
So yeah, mobile comps are really good for that. For example, because you can get in and out, and as long as you're revolving around your Brigitte, she's playing around cover, and you're keeping her safe, so that if people are trying to get to her, you're helping her out. I think that those fights go on forever, and you get a ton of value from Brig. Plus, she's hard to dive too, right? Like as a Winston, you don't really want to dive Brigitte. You see Brigitte, and you're like, is there anyone else?
Oh, also, if she has got Inspire running, that's even more ridiculous because she can heal underneath that armor. Pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, speaking of brawly fights, let's go on to Symmetra with the Photon Projector Secondary Fire. Damage increase. This is the only buff of the set. And Symmetra's alternate fire, the Bubbles of Death, are going from 120 max damage to 140. This is fantastic. This puts your tracers down to 10 and your 200 HP heroes down to 60. So you're getting even closer to being able to kill somebody with a right click and a melee.
I personally don't understand this change. Like, who's calling for Symmetra to hit harder right now? I don't. I think she's in a good spot. I think that if you know how to play her, she's good. She has some very like fringe utility in maps like Hanamura, for example. People have started using it very constantly to sort of teleport straight to the point and avoid that choke point altogether. So I don't know. I think she has a good place in the meta right now. You don't want Sim to become the DPS to go. It's like when Mei becomes a DPS to go with. It's like, okay, it's fun for Sim players, but for everyone else, it's like, oh god, we got to deal with the Symmetra.
I think that this change is geared to help Symmetra players not feel like they need to be in their beam range to do something. This trash damage is probably geared to help speed up barriers play from a distance.
But you know what? Somebody pointed this out to me. I think it was Yankee or Jay Lee yesterday. We were playing at this breakpoint, at this damage amount. If you damage boost Symmetra, you're one-shotting any 200 HP hero.
I think that's the threshold they want. They want this thing to feel deadly at range.
That is just ridiculous to me. You're going to have pocketed Symmetras. You're going to have like a...
It'll be fine. It'll get banned for a week.
Symmetra Mercy just running rampant for like a whole week. Yeah, until it gets banned.
How many Symmetra metas have we had, Andres? You big fat goose egg.
We've
Zero.
We've had a few Symmetra metas. I mean, there haven't been lasted for like a really long time, but like sometimes when Bastion gets really popular, like Symmetra kind of like comes out too.
I will say she's probably been meta for specific maps, sure. But like any hero, that's short-lived.
But see, I'm fine with that. Like Symmetra doesn't have to be like meta for every single point.
Well, it'll be fine because they'll just nerf it again. Right? Because we're gonna get new balance changes next week. That's just how the new system works.
I don't know who was calling for this buff over here, but all right. If Blizzard's balancing fast, I guess it's not the end of the world.
Hey, if you can't beat them, join them. Am I right? Get a pocket mercy in your pay grade. All right, next one is Widow's Kiss for Widowmaker. This is the name of her sniper rifle. For the full charge time on scoped shots is now increased to 1 full second. It's no longer 0.83, oddly specific, to get to your full charge. Now, a few of you may be aware of this if you play a lot of Widowmaker, but to get a fully charged shot that is also a headshot is actually overkill on 200 hit point heroes. So if you're not targeting a Reaper or a Mei, you do not need a fully charged round. So people that are shooting Widowmaker shots, because she has, I think, the only hero in the game that has an adjusted crit window, right? Everyone else is basically 1.5 times on the crit, or 2 times on the crit, right? Hers is like a little higher when
So,
she's
well,
scoped.
her damage changes at the longer you're
Yeah.
scoped. So yeah, you're hitting at different damage thresholds the longer you're scoped in. This is an interesting change. I guess it makes it a little bit harder for Widowmakers to get quick
It's 2.5
kills.
multiplier.
Especially for the really good Widowmakers that can just hone in really, really fast. They're gonna feel it, right? They're not gonna be able to kill people at the timing that they're used to. I know for a fact I'm gonna have to relearn timings on it.
It's a mess.
Because yeah, you're not gonna be able. You have to wait a little bit longer to be able to kill those 200 HP heroes. So the time that you press it, scope in and press the trigger is gonna change. I mean, that's not the worst problem. I'm sure a lot of Widowmakers will adapt fast to it. But yeah, she's gonna feel a little clunky starting out with it.
Yep, it's definitely a let's change Hanjo from, you know, super slow missile speed to super fast and then super slow again. It's kind of that kind of change for Widowmaker. It's kind of the same thing. It's like it's annoying, but you can do it.
Yeah, it sort of evens it out a little bit in that matchup.
Right.
I also think it has to do with quick scopes, right? Like quick scopes, maybe we're doing it like a tiny bit more damage than they wanted. They're especially effective. I like using them, for example, when I'm fighting Genjis, because you know they were waiting for you to go into full scope to do their deflect. So sometimes if you just do a quick scope, they don't have the time to react. So you get the damage in and sometimes bait them into using that deflect. And then you can kind of like scope in and wait for the deflect to run out. Or sometimes because they don't see you scoping and you're just kind of like poking them with quick scopes, they actually never deflect. And you end up just killing them in like 2 or 3 quick scopes if you land them.
And that also has that weird window of time where you can just fire the assault rifle of Widow's Kiss and then get a melee in, right? Somewhere in that same matchup example. That's going to be a little bit more awkward, I think, because pulling in and out of the scope's got its own delay of downtime where you can't do anything. And then on top of that, it's going to be longer for how much damage you're going to have to get out of certain things because of the percentile and all that, right? Like the damage thresholds are slower.
Yeah. So this was an interesting one. I'm not like too opposed to it. I could see some reasons why they're doing it. Widowmaker's not super oppressive right now. Maybe at the higher levels, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's everything. That's all the changes. That's 3 patches, and I think we need to get out of here. This has been quite a whirlwind of changes and adjustments and opinions and hot takes, if you will. But we hope that you enjoy the new hero pools and cheer on our good friend Andres as he approaches. He's really close to getting the Masters, so please cheer him on Twitter. Shoot him some love. And maybe dodge if you're in Diamond and you see I play games on the other side after you miss the threshold. You can just like leave. No, I'm just kidding. That's against terms of service. Don't do that. It's a lie. It's just a joke. But let's thank a few people on our Diamond sponsorship roles for Patreon. If you guys sign up at patreon.com/OmnicLab, you can get to sponsor every week of the show. You get a shout out. You get links on the website. You get a special role in Discord. You get all our undying love and gratitude. These people are Cypher, Shazir, Shepard, and Christoplay. You guys are the best. We have had many people along the line sticking around with us for many, many months, and you guys are still here, so thank you. Also, I talked with Shaz last week and sat in on his D&D Dragonlance setting, which was really, really cool to see a 1st/2nd edition game being played on 5th edition. If you're excited about that, you can always ask him about it on Discord. Cypher's doubling up on coaching sessions all the time. Shepard is the great guy to always pop in his opinions when he thinks about cool stuff. I love hearing from Shepard. And Chris is just a really, really good, solid friend that we have had the pleasure of meeting at multiple BlizzCons. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. And special thanks to the new patron on the team, Jared Y. Thank you for signing up. If you guys are still curious about anything to do with your coaching sessions, you can do that at the platinum level on our Patreon. If you have any other questions, feel free to jump into our Discord at discord.me/OmnicLab. Just type it in your browser and it'll generate a Discord link for you. And you can hop in our Discord there. We've got merch. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitch. and Google Play as well as Spotify. So you guys can find us pretty much anywhere and share it with your friends. iPlay, where can people find you on the internet?
If you want to personally find me, you can go to I Play Games on Twitter. You spell that IPLAI Games. And I've been trying to stream a little bit more here and there. I've been streaming a little bit of Legends of Runeterra and a little bit of my Overwatch endeavors. You can catch that at twitch.tv/IPlayGamesTV.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram with the tag Not Rob, and my Twitch is Not Rob May. I would have been streaming this last couple times, but I actually did a full playthrough of Zelda Link's Awakening on the Switch without going on stream for a change, and it was a lot more enjoyable to kind of sit back and get frustrated without being on camera. So it was kind of nice. But I think it's about time to call you guys lab rats and get out of here. But remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. We'll see you guys next week. And good luck in your future season. See ya.
I have nothing more to teach you. The rest